I recall, John, on one of your appearances on our program, you told me that SARS-19 was the most significant change ever in the field of compilation and reviews. I'm curious, do you still feel that way?
Becky, I think what I said was the SARS committee says it was the most significant change to compilation and reviews since 1979. I think what I said was that the SARS-19 standard was primarily focused on incorporating best practices into the performance of compilation and reviews, of which many, many firms had, for the most part, already incorporated. Have there been some firms that maybe did not? Of course there are. For some of those firms that did not incorporate best practices in the last few years, these changes in SARS-19 were probably significant for them. But I think for many, many firms, this was just doing what they had been doing for years. The only real difference was the report language changed a bit, and firms had not been doing that.
Well, it makes sense that firms are implementing the new SARS-19 guidance. From your perspective, what's the most significant change?
Probably, if you look at all of the changes that came out of SARS-19, the one that was probably not the most significant, but which was a significant change in the literature, was the requirement to have an engagement letter for all compilation and reviews. Prior engagement letters were recommended. Now they are required. So even if a firm incorporated best practices to have an engagement letter for every compilation and review, they did it on their own. It was not a requirement in the literature. The other issue that I think some firms have questioned a little bit is that concept of review evidence that's in the review part of SARS-19, which basically suggests that a firm performing a review in order to obtain limited assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement has to obtain sufficient review evidence. And review evidence is defined simply as the results of inquiries, the results of analytical procedures, the obtaining of a rep letter. And then it goes on to say that there may be a need to perform other procedures in order to obtain review evidence. And reading the SARS-19 material, as well as the SARS codification that came out later, there's a suggestion that under some circumstances a reviewer may perform audit procedures if they deem it necessary in order to obtain limited assurance in the performance of their review. That's probably the most significant new issue associated with SARS-19 because many of us would not have defaulted to an audit procedure in the performance of a review level of service. We may have forced the client to provide us with more support information. We may have waited through a longer subsequent event period to see if an issue got resolved. But I'm not sure many of us would have automatically defaulted to an audit procedure. The literature now seems to assume that that would be an acceptable thing to do if, in the accountant's opinion, he or she believed that the only way to provide limited assurance would be to perform an audit procedure.